Good morning and welcome. Today on the Closers Inner Circle podcast with me, Denise Griffitts, and my co-host, Ben Gay III, we are continuing our deep dive into what sales professionals really should be focusing on the final quarter of the year, finishing strong and setting the stage for success in the year ahead, and it's coming fast. We're looking at November in just a few days. This episode is all about reflection and review. And if I'm stuttering, it's because my cat is yelling at me. Sorry. She's 21. I can't ignore her. And we're taking an honest look at what worked, what didn't, and what needs to shift before you head into the new year. So be sure to grab your copies of the Closers books. You can head on over to Ronzoni Books on eBay and keep those in front of you each week as we work through the strategies, the exercises, and insights that will help you finish the year strong and prepare for what's ahead. And this show today is sponsored by David L. Brown. Now, David has been a longtime supporter of the Closers Inner Circle podcast, as well as your partner in Success Radio. And he's a valued friend behind the scenes to both of us. He's a true advocate for meaningful conversations that are rooted in integrity, service, and purpose-driven entrepreneurship. His steady encouragement and unwavering belief in doing business the right way have made a lasting impact on this show and its mission. And you can connect with David at dbrowncompany.com. You can find him on LinkedIn and across other social platforms. And tell him we sent you. Ben, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm peachy. I said it too fast, didn't I? That means it's not even close to true. I'm almost peachy.
Well, that's good enough. Close counts in hand grenades and horseshoes.
It does. It really does. I had a rough week last week. As you know, I told you my sink backed up, my dishwasher sink backed up. It took me 3 days to get it fixed. I'm an autodidact. You can't tell me that I can't do something, because then I get mad and I will do it. It may take a lot longer than it should have, but it got done and I've got clean floors and baseboards, so I'm all happy.
But even small achievements are rewarding, and that one's not a small achievement. I'm not handy. You get a kick out of my toolbox. It has a lock on it. The lock isn't to keep thieves out, it's to keep me out. Gigi has the key to the lock on the toolbox because I'm not. With a good story, I can get a pair of pliers or a screwdriver out. Short of that, she doesn't want me helping or fixing anything.
I've been known to swap doors around. I hang my own ceiling fans. I do it all.
Not a chance.
Now, don't ask me to change a tire on a car. I've had women pull over to help me because I can look that helpless while I'm standing there. I don't do tires.
Gigi decided she was out by herself doing something, and she decided she needed air in the tires. I don't know, or in a tire. So a gas station that we go to frequently if we're on that side of town, she pulls in there, gets out the air hose, and there's a lady inside. It's also, sort of a convenience store type setup. And she watched Gigi struggle for a few minutes, and then she came out and she said, "Honey, is there any reason you're putting water in your tires?"
Oh, no.
Gigi said, "The hoses look alike, and they're together. So how was I to know?" And I said, "Water running all over the ground, would that be a hint?"
See, you probably should have just stayed quiet right then.
Probably should have, yeah. But it gave me some ammunition for the ridicule I get for trying to fix things. There are stories that go back years of me trying to. I put together the table, rolling table that one of our microwaves came on, or came with the microwave. And then when I got through with the table, I was very proud of it. And the good news was, if you put something in to heat it up, you didn't have to reach in and get it in the microwave. You just opened the door and it would slide out into your hands, because the table had a rakish angle.
So you learned very quickly not to put a cup of soup in there, I'm guessing.
Right, exactly. So I don't do anything like that. And the good news is I don't want to do anything like that. So it works out great.
I kind of enjoy it, but I like to be able to, stand there with my hands on my hips like Rosie the Riveter and go, I did it. You
I've never had that experience.
I've always been, largely handy, but, I'm an autodidact. I need to learn how to break it, fix it, break it again just for fun, and then fix it again just to prove that I could. So that's the story of my life. So what are we talking about this week? We've got all kinds of stuff to cover between now and the first of the year, which,
Super.
I mean, it's almost November. It's what, Friday is Halloween?
Yep. All I have to do is scare the hell out of a few little kids and the month is over.
I can do that. Did I ever tell you what I did one Halloween?
No.
Oh, I love Halloween, I really do, but I always put a life-size witch on the bench. I have a covered porch in the front, and there's a bench there, and I always dress her in my clothes, long black skirt, long black boots, with a scary witch head and, flashlights behind the eyes. It's scary at night, but it's life-size, and the neighborhood kids get used to it until I put fresh clothes on, I take her place, and I stand up when they all gather. Hello, children. They scatter. I don't have to give out that much candy. I don't know why.
Yeah, word spreads.
They run.
Don't go near that crazy lady's house.
It works. I get to, save money for a plumber if I ever need one.
Well, I hate to admit this, but actually I'm proud of it, but probably announcing it to the whole world is not a good idea. We live in one of those, we're out in the country, but we live in a suburb. You know what I mean? There's 50 houses in our development, and it's like any other suburb in the country. Nice houses, reasonably close together and so on, but surrounded by miles of countryside where people can't go trick or treating, or, there's a 600 yards between houses type thing. So they truck them all into our little neighborhood. And one year, I'm anal, but I've never counted the kids. But one year, they had a package at the store, 2,000 pieces of candy
Oh, good
for
Lord.
whatever number it was. And I knew we had a lot of kids coming. We'd been here a few years by that time, so I bought the 2,000 piece uh, candy selection, and we agreed we'd give each kid, because they were nice ones. These weren't lifesavers. We give each kid 2 pieces of candy, and then towards the end of the evening, we would be more generous, because surely to God, with 2,000 pieces, we would have leftovers.
No,
Well,
no. No,
it,
and I bet it was all stale, too.
it might have been. I didn't have any of it, so I don't know. But at 9 p.m., which on Halloween night is a little early, the evening's normally not over by that time. 2 pieces per kid, 2,000 pieces. We ran out at 9 o'clock. So that meant 1,000 kids came through there. And we have in our neighborhood officially, I'm guessing, 5 kids at any given time.
Hmm.
People come and go, and it's a nice neighborhood. So the people tend to be older people who've salted away enough to have a house here. But and I said, my God, we've had 1,000 kids. We didn't know any of them. None of them are local. I'm done. So we began putting the uh, the love seat looking plastic furniture in front of the steps backwards and turning off the porch light. We retired from the Halloween business.
We
And
did too, this whole neighborhood years ago, because they would have, and I wrote an article about that not too long ago, along with daylight saving time and this outdated Halloween thing. But When I bought this house, it was right between Katrina and Rita, those hurricanes. And it was, I mean, this was plantation ground. We were all far apart. So they would get the kids. We only had one little school here at the time. We have two now. But they would get the kids, put them on hay rides with police and fire trucks and drive them around all the little scattered neighborhoods. They're still doing that. There's no dirt left anywhere. Everything's been cut down. There's houses everywhere, but they're still hauling thousands of kids to neighborhoods. A lot of us, and what you're describing with the candy when you run out, when I hit $100 for candy, I said, that's it. I'm never doing this again.
I don't remember what ours cost, but I just knew because they advertised how many pieces were in the package, so
That's
I knew that.
crazy.
And and of the 1,000 little gremlins, many of them were too small to say anything. They just,
Right.
but the ones who were old enough to know the words "thank you," I'm guessing I heard it 5 times all night. And out of 1,000 kids, let's say 500 were too young to do it. Out of the other 500, very few thank yous. So I'm not grumpy about it. I don't put up signs, keep off the lawn or anything. I
No.
just don't turn off the lights, block the front
Yeah.
stairway thing, and I'm done.
My whole neighborhood does that. And we're only this neighborhood, and now it's joined to all the adjoining neighborhoods that didn't used to be here, is only 3 streets deep, 3 streets wide. So
Mhm.
it made sense at the time. But now, and they're still doing it. And I'm like you, I just shut everything down. I make sure there's no lights on, there's no pumpkins lit. They know if there's maybe 3 or 4 houses in the whole neighborhood that give out candy now, I'd be surprised. We're done.
Well, that unfortunate. I used to love to go trick or treating. I even
Me
semi enjoyed taking the kids when they were young trick or treating. But the impoliteness of the parents and bringing them and the kids and the way they treated, I've retired, ain't going back. And it's sort of nice.
It
And the other
is.
thing, they do honor a dark porch and the sofa, the whatever they are, the little plastic love seats. They honor those. Never had anybody climb over them and ring the bell.
Same here, honestly. And I'll turn on, a spooky story. It's really spooky, like, the Addams Family. Scares me. That kind of thing. And I'll be watching it in the dark with my cats, and we hear the kids going by. But it bugs me, and it always has, is these big old tall 16, 17, 18-year-old kids bringing
Yeah,
a, pillowcase. Like, no, no, no. Does your mama know where you are? No. But
I never did it, but I was going to put up one of those PVC pipe frames on the sidewalk coming up to the house that says if you can uh, if you have to duck to walk under this, go away.
you're too
And
tall.
yeah, you're too tall, you're too big. I mean, there's a point at which it's just stupid. And now they say more and more adults are into Halloween than they used to be, and the kids are less interested. So I don't know what that means,
My
but
parents used to go trick or treat with a brandy snifter.
yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I didn't understand it till much later. I went, oh, okay,
My
never
mother was
mind.
a rum drinker. She drank light. Well, I guess it's called light. It's almost clear Bacardi rum, which is, at least in the South in those days, something very few places stock. So she had a beautiful leather encased flask. And when somebody says, "Where do you want to go, Fran?" She says, "I don't care. I'm set."
See,
She
around
had a,
here we call that Everclear.
so yeah, she and the only time I've ever seen her mad was one day she picked up the paper and Fidel Castro, who was the darling of the world until he admitted what he was really up to, had nationalized the Bacardi rum factory. And prior to that time, she was either in favor of him or neutral. I don't remember it really being an issue. But when he nationalized the Bacardi rum factory, she threw down her paper and said, "That's it."
She took it personally.
Yeah, and she wasn't a heavy drinker, wasn't a wild person at all, but
Yeah.
she liked her light Bacardi rum. So
I
anyway, I've
I've
got
never even tried it. Okay, keep going, sorry.
I've just got a couple of notes I made during the week. One is sticking up for the United States Postal Service. I have never had a problem with the United States Postal Service between down the road when we lived in a little community called Cameron Park and here in Placerville where I moved, I don't know, 35 years ago, 50 years total, uh, shipping millions, literally millions of packages all over the country and to a limited degree all over the world. They've lost, totally lost, never reappeared one package. And so I've always been a big fan. I thought the USPS is sort of a secret that a lot of people don't know about it because they hear so many bad things. And our local post office has nice people in it. One of them's actually a social friend that I met because he worked there. And so, anyway, I said all that to say this. The other day, a person called in and placed a book, nice size, wasn't humongous, but a nice size book order. And we decided to upgrade it to priority mail because um, it was a goodly amount of money when you're selling individual books. And we didn't tell him, we just did it. So we packed up the order in several medium flat rate priority mail boxes. He had ordered within a couple of minutes of our 2 o'clock deadline. Order by 2, it leaves here that day. That's our policy, as you know. He had ordered a couple of minutes before or after, but whatever it was, they put it in the 2 o'clock batch Friday. And we're in Northern California. He was in Georgia, over near the coast. And I thought, well, this would be a nice surprise for him. He orders on Friday. It'll probably show up Tuesday or Wednesday, and he'll be impressed with our sudden service. And I think he'd ordered before. I really don't recall. So we did it, and off it went to the post office and so on. That Friday, probably got to the post office around 3. Saturday, 23 hours later, they put the package on his doorstep. Packages on his doorstep, less than 24 hours, coast to coast. So we look great. He mentioned to one of our staff earlier this week that he was astounded. He said, I didn't know what sudden service meant. And I think that's what caused us to track it, to find out what had happened. Well, he was astounded with the sudden service because he ordered at 2 on Friday. He said, I ordered to get in under the wire. I know your rule about that. And I figured I'd have it midweek, and that was great. And it showed up less than a day later. Wow, you guys are tremendous. So we didn't tell them it was the post office, surprising all of us.
Yeah.
It was because it was all them. All we did was what we were supposed to do. But isn't that amazing? 23 hours coast to coast for, I don't know, pennies a book. I don't know what a medium flat rate box goes for anymore, but it's not much, especially if you divide it by 15 or 20 books, whatever fits in one of them. So we look great. And for those of our listeners, give sudden service. You look like you're King Kong just because nobody else does it on their end. And then because of fear of the post office, they go with the UPS and FedEx and so on, which on the other end, I don't like anything coming to us, FedEx or UPS, because you got to sign for it or go pick up if no one's around or after hours or whatever. We had a delivery the other night at 8 o'clock. And by coincidence, I caught him, but he was already writing the little note. We tried, go to our nearest UPS facility and so on. Post office doesn't do that. They leave it for you, period, either
Huh.
at your P.O. box or whatever. So there's a free commercial for the United States Postal Service. I am a big fan no matter what you read. We've had a few now that you can track things. That didn't used to be the case when I first got into mail order. Well, we've had a few take a circuitous route, from Northern California to Alaska. And first it goes to Georgia
Right.
and then New York. And you think, what is the computer reading? But that only adds a day or two. I mean, the end result, it was still fine. It was just humorous. But 23 hours coast to coast from our truck to their lobby, I guess, or wherever it went, just astounded me. So it was a commercial for them. Another commercial is for David Brown. David, and I know you guys have become good friends over the
Oh,
years.
yeah. In fact, I'm meeting with him on Monday. I need help with my business plan, this
All
thing that
right.
I'm architecting for the new year.
He
I've
is
already talked
really,
with you about it. Now I'm hauling him in, and I'm going to actually listen to the advice given by both of you. Now, say,
oh,
good girl, Denise.
well, one of the things that is proof that you listened at least to me once is I was the one who encouraged you to have sponsors for this show. And David
And,
Brown is a sponsor today.
and
So,
you're a sponsor for my other podcast.
yeah. So, anyway, David Brown is a neat guy. Do what Denise says to do. I met him at a seminar somewhere. I forget where, but a seminar out on the road.
Michigan, I think. Tony
Probably,
Wrobleski.
yeah, probably Tony
Yeah,
Lubileski. But David's one of those people you meet, and I'm always saying that people buy from people they know, like, trust, and with whom they feel safe. David Brown is one of those people. I'd known him about 30 seconds where I thought, I like this guy. Calm, intelligent. Further conversation showed he really knew what he was talking about. And I guess we're friendly competitors in a few little consulting areas, but that doesn't stop me from telling you David Brown is really something.
he
And
is.
I encourage you to do it. And then, probably touched on this last week, I forget exactly when it happened. I had written that thing in Facebook and so on about getting into places where you technically don't belong. It follows on. I've written about
Wamish. Yeah,
yeah,
Wamish.
and the yellow door
Right.
that comes from Ray Considine, Weymouth, wanting to get into an AT&T exhibit, and there was a long. He said I came up to a sign that said, "From this point, it's 3 hours to get in," and he's looking across the grass. And on the side of the building, he sees a yellow door. People go up to it, knock on the door, show their papers or whatever because they work there, I guess, and they get in. So he took his wife's hand and said, "Come on, we can get right up front in this thing." It was an AT&T World Fair exhibit or something. And she says, "How?" And he says, "Follow me." Knocks on the door, bap, bap, bap. There must have been some exchange back and forth, but Ray had a way of introducing himself on the phone. He'd say, "Considine," when he was answering or calling you, either one. So he knocked on the yellow door, and somebody must have said something. He said, "Considine," and the door opened, and he and his wife walked into the center of the exhibit. I love that story just because it's funny up to that point. But the lesson he taught me, he said, "Ben, every situation has a yellow door. Always look for it."
And it's
Or,
confidence. We've talked about that too.
yeah,
If you don't
carry a
have,
ladder,
yep, and have confidence.
ladder, uh, uh, dust rag, a clipboard, something, and look into the middle distance. You're not trying to make friends. You're trying to get into a situation. So anyway, I'm taking partial credit for the robbery at the Louvre
Uh-oh,
because,
you did
well,
not just say that.
what did they do?
They
What they
got a
did was
ladder
they
in
got a
broad
ladder,
daylight.
put themselves in the appropriate attire. I've always
It
said
was
that appropriate
pretty
attire.
bold. It was a
Carry,
bold move.
yeah, and pull up in broad daylight to what should be a heavily guarded building. Put up your cherry picker ladder climb up. If you see that video, look in the background. Nobody's paying any attention. They're just walking by and so on. And 7 minutes later, they come back down the ladder and they're gone. Now, it turns out they've already got two of them at apparently they're not real bright and they left DNA in their gloves and
Oh,
helmet. And
I
so,
didn't know that.
yeah, they'll all be caught. And when you have 2 out of 4, they'll all be caught because they'll threaten the 2 that they have and they'll flip on their
Oh,
best
yeah.
friends, the other 2. As you know, I have 11 years of prison experiences at San Quentin and Lompoc. And I can't tell you how many times I've met people who were in one building and barred from the other one because in the other one were the people who ratted them out.
Oh,
And they'll say, if you're inclined to do a crime, do it by yourself. Because if they get one of you, they got all of you. So anyway, I'd like to think that they read one of my stories or heard me tell the story because here came the 2-story ladder, the truck, everything, and nobody said a word. So, and then stories. Somebody says you're always telling us to learn stories. Well, here's the deal: people buy with word pictures. And that's one of the most effective ways to get them if they can see what you're talking about. Stalin said, "One death is a tragedy, 10,000 is a statistic."
mm-hmm.
True. But if you show them a picture of 10,000 people, then it's an enormous tragedy. And people are always talking, oh, 50,000 people did this. It means nothing to people. Show them a stadium with 50,000 people in it, and you've got a word picture.
You
So,
do. And you know what? And this is going to sound odd, but remember that guy, the CEO that took his girlfriend and got caught on the Coldplay?
yeah,
That was a picture. That
yeah,
was a
there's an example. Yeah.
yeah. Nobody's ever going to
If you'd heard that guy got caught at a Coldplay concert, okay,
right. And
name
most
wouldn't have
people are
meant
going,
anything.
Coldplay? Really? You couldn't do better? But I don't know anything about that group. But it just when I saw those pictures, they're indelible. You will always, if you see it with no context at all, you're going to know who that guy is or was.
You also know what he's up to because of the look he got on his face when
When
you
he
looked up and
ducked,
saw him on the big screen.
he dropped to his knees and crawled out.
But
I
that's
don't think he's going to be taken seriously ever again for anything.
probably not. I think he resigned his job or got fired or something.
Yeah, or
But
both.
and I would have loved to have been at home with him that night at dinner when he and his wife were discussing his business trip, I guess.
I think he was locked out before he even
Yeah,
made it
yeah, he
down to
came
the
home and the locks were
parking
changed.
lot. Yeah, I
But
don't think that
those
was
are
ever
word
fixed. Yeah, but
those are word pictures, and you want to
exactly.
draw them for people in their mind. And the best way to do that is have stories. This one fits this situation. This one fits this situation, and so on. That you can tell well, that you've practiced, and so on. I have about 10, 15 stories, I'm guessing, that I can drop in the appropriate situations. And Winston Churchill was known for his quick wit and his ability to dice someone down. Somebody said to him one day he'd had a little too much to drink at a dinner, and she's in all the stories about him, said, Sir Winston, if I were your wife, I would drink poison. Let's see. I would put poison in your coffee. And he said, if I were your husband, I'd drink it.
Yeah.
And they said, God, that was fast on his part. Well, he admitted later in a book or an interview or something, he had come up with that line, waiting for that insult years before. And he said, suddenly it presented itself. So I got credit for being quick witted, but I was 10 years lying in the bushes waiting for someone to insult me in that manner. So have stories that are illustrative of what you're trying to talk about. And when you're putting together a story, put in details. If you say, I have a funny story that I tell, I won't repeat it here because it's a little uh, not off color, but different. And if I told you the story, and I said, this guy uh, went into a room and blah 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 said this and so on. Uh, People go, it's like a priest, a rabbi walk into a bar. You know it's a joke. You're just waiting for the punchline. But if you, as I do, when I tell that story locally, I drop in names. You know Bob Kumbelic, don't you? Lives up in Pollock Pines. Yeah, well, and then I tell the story, and where it happened and how it happened, all with names, and you can just watch them get sucked in. So in your
Because they're
story,
connecting. They're making connections.
yeah, yeah, and believability or lack of believability goes away. My father told me a story. I won't bore you with it now. I think I already have once about a buffalo herd, and it was a cute little story. But it's one of my favorites, and people ask me now, tell the story, because I made the buffalo herd Jewish, and I named the lead buffalo Irving Buckmeyer. So, and I was telling it to somebody one time, my dad was still alive. He said, where did Jewish and Irving Buckmeyer come from? Because he knew it was his story. And I said, it makes it more interesting. And people dial in and listen. A year or so later, I'm back in Atlanta, and they said, Ben, to my father, Ben, tell him the buffalo story. And he said, well, it was this Jewish buffalo herd. And he looked over at me and winked. He stole Jewish buffalo herd and Irving Buckmeyer from me. I stole the basic story from him. So learn stories, have details in the stories, and make sure they're pertinent to the moment. I have one I love to tell, and I love shaggy dog stories, longer stories with an ending you didn't expect. I don't know where the term shaggy dog comes from, but those are shaggy dog stories. This guy, and this comes up when people are talking about people who are very wise and all knowing, or think they are. And I'll say, that reminds me, there was this guy in England who, part of the Bradbury family, and he was looking for the secret of life. And someone said, there's a gentleman in Montana who sits on top of a hill in a white robe who knows the secret of life. He said, I've got to find him. Well, he sailed across the ocean, hired a wagon or something, got in the wagon and crossed the country, and bad things befell them. They got robbed, and this happened and that happened and so on. But he kept going, including the last 20 miles through the desert on foot. And then he climbs up the mountain he was told he was in, and he comes to a guy sitting on a ledge in front of a cave in a white robe. He's found the guy. And he says, Master, I have come for the secret of life. And the guru says, a wet bird never flies at night. He said, I've come 5,000 miles across the desert, a boat that sank and this and that and so on, and you tell me a wet bird never flies at night? And the guru said, do they? So
Be careful who you put your faith in.
if
Oh my.
profound people who think they know more than they know, if that subject ever comes up, add the wet bird story to your thing. And the punchline to the Irving Buckmeyer Jewish buffalo thing is they ask him to lead a stampede. They were bored. Somebody went up the hill, and he says, okay, get them lined up. I'll lead them. So they get all lined up, thousands of buffalo. Irving Buckmeyer comes down, gets to the front of the herd, looks them over, nods, and takes off. And they all follow him, and they're so excited. They're nodding to each other back in the herd. We've never had a stampede this good before. And then all of a sudden, Irving Buckmeyer slams on all four brakes, and buffalo heads meet buffalo rear ends, and they're knocked out all over the prairie. There's couple thousand buffalo stunned and or unconscious. And when they wake up and sort of regather, they look up on the hill, and there's Irving Buckmeyer sitting down on this hill chewing on some grass. And they said, somebody ought to find out what went wrong. Go up and ask him. So they sent a volunteer up, and they said, Mr. Buckmeyer, everything was going so well. We had the best stampede we've ever had. What happened? He said, I thought I heard a discouraging word.
Oh, no, 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 no.
So if you're in a sales meeting and somebody says something negative, that reminds me of Irving Buckmeyer. He was the leader of a Jewish buffalo.
Oh, my God.
So have the stories be ready. You don't have to make them up at the time. They're best made up years before you need them, and best told effectively. And then you said we're supposed to regroup for next year.
Yeah.
Now,
Right. We're going into the final stretch. So I guess the question from me is, what should closers or entrepreneurs be reviewing first? Numbers, habits, or mindset? Where do they go?
yes.
All of them.
Yeah. The
I knew
answer
that.
is yes. And you just said, I know that or knew that. That's also the secret of good coaching. I do coaching and consulting and so on. When people ask me questions about what should I do, rarely do I come up with something they never thought of. Most people know what they should be doing, but out of laziness, procrastination, whatever, sometimes there might be some ignorance mixed in that they don't know exactly what to do, but they all have an idea. It's like somebody saying to you, should I steal or not? Well, when they ask the question, they know the answer. No, you should not steal. Well, should I get up early, stay up late, and work on weekends to be successful? At a certain stage in your career, that may be necessary. So the how do I set out next year? Good news, you already have the answer. First, get out a legal pad or your computer, whatever you do, and write down what you should have done last year. Looking back, you know what you did. Whatever it was, you slept until noon. You only made 4 or 5 new calls a week. You only did this, you only did that. Really be hard on yourself. Criticize yourself. What did I do wrong? And then spend a little time on what did you do right? And then get out your calendar. As you know, I'm a calendar guy, but your computer, your calendar, however you do it, and write down next year all of the things you should have done this year. Let's say you're supposed to make 5 new calls a day, phone calls, in person, whatever, but you didn't. So you write on your calendar, make 5 calls, move up. That means make 5 calls and move it up to the next day before you cross it out, because you can do 5 calls that day also. If by chance you make 6 calls that day, doesn't make any difference. You make 5 calls. You don't get a credit. You make 5 new calls tomorrow. And you write it down. I move things up if it's something reoccurring like that by the week. It might say make 5 calls, Monday, Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. Friday, it says make 5 calls, dash, move up next week. It means before you cross this one out, get them all set up for next week. And for you younger people, you say, why don't you just put that in the computer? There's all sorts of psychological reasons why you don't. It works better if you write it down. You think about it when you're writing it, it commits you to doing it and so on. But I'm not going to fight the computer legal pad calendar issue. It's not worth the time or trouble. I write it down. And I've written, co-written, ghost-written, published over 35 books. I've been using the figure 35 books for quite some time. And so it's obviously higher than that now. But that comes from on my calendar. It's every day, Monday through Friday. It says 1 page dash move up. Steve Williford, a ghostwriter friend of mine, he's a writer, but I knew him. I met him because he was going to ghostwrite a book for me. Told me that pushed me into doing this, and all the books since then have come since this conversation, and I've never hired a ghostwriter since, including Steve. He said he hated giving me that advice because it cost him a lot of money. But I write a page of proofwritten, publishable copy every day, or I don't leave the office. Now, once I start writing, many times my calendar says write a page. I write 20 pages because when I get on a roll, sales infiltration, the last chapter in the closers part 2, the best thing I've ever written about selling, I believe the best thing that's ever written about selling, was written in one sitting on a legal pad. I got on a roll. I call it, for me that day, it was inspired writing. And I wrote the whole thing in longhand or printed or handwritten. I'm not sure how many pages it was in the book. It's about 40 pages. So I assume I wrote about 50, 60 pages of copy in one sitting on a legal pad. But the reason I picked up the legal pad was I was supposed to write 1 page that day. Now, let's assume that I was supposed to write 1 page, and I wrote, we'll call it 50 pages. And I wrote 50 and edited it, and it was ready to go. And that's exactly the way it's in the book, is the way I wrote it on the legal pad. The next day, my calendar said, write 1 page. I didn't get credit for writing 50 pages or whatever it was. That I got credit for doing it and got a chapter that is world famous and life changing for many salespeople. But I didn't get to take a day off of writing. The next day, I looked at my calendar and said, write 1 page. And I remember thinking, God, I wrote till my hand was cramped yesterday, and I got good stuff down. I sent it to the office. It's being typeset as we speak. And then I looked back at the calendar and said, write 1 page. So since that was the last chapter in the closers part 2, I probably wrote the first page of the next book. Years ago, I wanted to make $1 million a year of new money. In other words, not rental from properties or anything like that. That was already coming in. I wanted to make $1 million a year extra.
New earning.
Yeah. And I wrote down, I rounded it off so it was easier to remember, but I divided 1 million by 365 and discovered that I had to make, I think it was $2,800 a year, $2,739 or whatever that is. But I rounded it up to 2,800. Every day I had to make a new $2,800. Then there came a day with a foreign client where I made, between speaking fee, book sales in advance. By the way, they ordered 20,000 copies or something in advance. And as a reward at the end of the 10 days I spent with them, they gave me 14% of the company. I made, it was $2,800 a day was the goal. I made $14 million had I sold the stock the day I got it, and so on. The story goes on, and that the stock was sold over time for different prices. But on the day they gave it to me, between the fees, the book sales, and the stock gift, $14 million. And a friend of mine called, and we were talking. He said, how'd it go? And I gave him the numbers I just gave you. He said, wow. that takes the pressure off that $2,800 a day, doesn't it? And I said, no, it's $2,800 a day, not $2,800 a day, but I already made $14 million. So I don't have to work for the next 14 years. That isn't the way it works. I've got to figure out a way to make $2,800 new today. He said, wow, I never knew it was that strict. It just keeps you on track.
It
Is-
does.
Yeah.
You lose your creativity if you go, oh, that was great. I don't have to work for whole week or whatever. And you get back to your computer or you stand back up from the couch where you've been eating bonbons, you don't feel so good. Your creativity's gone. You have to kind of start over. It's not a good idea.
Right. And that would have been 14 years of I don't have to work, assuming you didn't blow any of the money you made and minus taxes and whatever. But the next day, I set about making $2,800 fresh. And that just kept me on track. Every day, I write one page of printable copy fresh. So if you're laying out next year now, figure out what you regret not doing last year. That's a big part of your new battle plan. And figure out what you did well last year that paid off, the old 80-20 rule. 80% of, you can do it with lots of things, but 20% of your effort makes 80% of the money, or vice versa, or what have you. But look back at what paid well and do more of that. Then lay out in writing those things you didn't do and you should have done them. And that's what, getting back to good coaching, where David and I probably work in the same, and you work in the same mindset element, in that the people we work with know. They may not know how to put together a web page like you do, but that's technical. They know they ought to have one. They know what they want it to do. So
And you can outsource that. And we want to talk about that too. Keep
I was going
going.
to say that their today list would be find Denise Griffitts.
Yeah.
And that handles that. You just you delegate what you don't know. I haven't got time. So a good friend of mine that we're doing some work together on said, all right, now I want to teach you how to, he was trying to lure me into doing more of the computer work that he's supposed to contribute. What I'm supposed to contribute is my genius, sales and marketing genius, which doesn't require doing anything. I already know it. I've told you my coaching and speaking, I steal from John Wayne, who said, because he was clear on who he was, he said when the director would begin talking to him, he'd say, I've already studied the script. Just tell me which hat to put on and what door to come through. Then I'll be John Wayne. So that's my contribution. I'm Ben Gay. I know a lot about sales and marketing, been very successful at it for a long time, had a lot of people become very successful who did what I told them to do, with variations, but basically did what I told them to do. So when David Brown and you and I are working with our various clients, when it comes down to the motivation and so on, they all know what they're supposed to be doing. Make 5 calls a day, get to the office by whatever time, uh, do this, do that, and you look back and go, I didn't really do that. Well, do that. Stop being stupid and do that. That's your plan for next year. There's no miracle secret. There's no spin around 5 times and put on a green hat. I was doing a seminar one time, and a guy in our little circle, it became legendary. This guy, sure, he was a nice person. If he's listening to this, I hope he's not. I'm not going to use his name, but he came up to me like people do at the end of seminars and wanted a book signed and so on. And then he leaned down and sort of whispered to me, I think a lot of them got some good out of this, but tell me what the the real secret is? I said, I've been waiting for somebody to ask that for a long time. Here's the secret. When you get home, paint your front door with Kelly green paint, top to bottom, side to side. And he said, so paint my front door green? I said, no, no, no. Listen carefully. Paint it with Kelly green paint, and your life will change. He said, thank you. Gave me a quick hug and left the room.
He did
And
not paint his door Kelly green,
I
did
don't
he?
know whether he did or not, but I know that he got the secret that nobody else in the room got.
Oh,
And Johnny Hyde, who you and I have talked about in the last 24 hours, Johnny Hyde, the great disc jockey, who was also a sales trainer for me, turned to me. He said, he overheard it and he said, you're sick. I said,
see,
well,
I didn't say that. I was thinking it, but I didn't say
yeah,
it.
here's a funny thing about it, self-fulfilling prophecies and mindset. It's possible. This is all theoretical. I was kidding. It was a joke to make fun of someone who asked an incredibly stupid question. Well, the question wasn't bad, but accepting that as the answer was incredibly stupid. It's possible that he went home, got some Kelly green paint at his hardware store, painted his front door green, and his life changed.
It's a
That's
color of
possible.
money. It's a
Yeah.
color of money. And we hear things that may land for just whatever reason. It may not make sense to you, it may not even make sense to them at the moment, but for some reason, synapses start, connecting and things start happening.
Yep. Yeah. I've done some things that led to success that looking back shouldn't have led to success. It probably just gave me confidence.
Mhm.
One of the my secrets in many of the classes I teach, public speaking, you come there to learn how to be a good public speaker and build a business. I got it. I do what it says I'm going to do. People builders at San Quentin, 12 hours a night, every Friday night to Saturday morning, was a cleverly disguised public speaking course because I figured if I could give them confidence. So I would give them, stand at the front of the room and yell and scream, you got to do this and you got to quit doing this. Bank robbing doesn't really have a great future to it. You will get caught. You'll spend 20,
Yeah,
30 years in prison.
it's short term.
Right. So that's I'm teaching you not to rob banks. Then I would say, now take the information, apply it to what you did, come to the front of the room and tell us why we shouldn't do that, the good, the bad, and so on. And they would. What they were becoming was public speakers, and that gave them confidence. And with confidence, you can do anything. Our youngest, Gigi's biological son, but our youngest son works in upscale hotels, and he changes from the locks we used to love, with a key where you could actually get in the door. He changes it to where you have to be a computer expert to get in the door. Take your card, wave it here, turn around 3 times and peek in the hole because they read your iris down in the lobby. And so you got to have that. And I've seen some now with fingerprints. You put your thumb
Oh,
on a pad.
no.
Yeah, put your thumb on a pad and get in. And he was very good at it. And he's moved up. He was working at Taco Bell and delivering pizzas part time. And the first year he got into this a few years ago, he made $186,000 just doing the lock part. Then he got into you got to put in the computer system and tell them how it works, which got him to the front of the room. And the difference in him as a speaker, he says, "Well, I'm sort of like Dad. I conduct seminars." Well, he does. They're not 12 hours and they're not high intensity, but it puts him at the front of the room talking to other people, and his confidence level, Denise, Gigi, right after he started doing that, said he's like a new person. Has said he's now a professional speaker. Speaking in public is the number one psychological fear, ahead of only death by fire. and he is one now. He is a speaker that will change everything else in his life. It'll change who he meets. The power of the microphone is awesome. You stand at the front of
Oh,
the
yeah.
room,
Yep.
stand at the front of the room with a microphone. You're a different person when you're through talking. You're
And if
true.
you're doing it through a podcast too, listen, nobody knows me. They don't know what I look like. They're never going to. I'm gorgeous, by the way. But anyway, just so you know. But, my privacy is very, very important to me. I am a highly committed introvert. You give me my microphone and I'm off and running.
The uh, a friend of Gigi's, a friend of mine by the time he died, but a friend of Gigi she grew up with died, and his daughter said, "Are you going to speak or speak for me?" I said, "Honey, I will, but I'm not good at funerals. Talking about sales, marketing, personal development, I'm a killer. But at funerals, I cry when my shirts come back from the laundry.
Oh,
So you really don't want me." I wrote my father's eulogy and I handed it to my mother when I got back to Atlanta. I said, "Here's what I wrote. I'm going to do this." And she looked at it and said, "It's beautiful. You're not doing it, but it's beautiful. I'll give it to the minister and he will read it." I said, "Mom, I wrote it and so on." She said, "You will bawl and sob and drop to the floor. I don't need that at your father's." So the minister gave an inspired talk that I wrote and never got credit for.
oh.
But so anyway, this young girl said, "Will you do it?" And I said, "I'll do a little, but you really don't want me collapsing on the floor in tears. So somebody in the family would be better." She said, "Well, I'll do it, but I'm scared to death." They gave her the microphone, a little handheld microphone, and she got in front of the room, and I was praying for her, "Come on, you can get through this." Well, she got about 10 words into it and got a good reaction from the audience. I saw her spine stiffen a little bit, and then she walked a little bit to the right and then walked back a little bit to the left. And then she was striding around the church. It was the chapel in a funeral home, but striding around like Elvis. And her other sister was looking at her after about 20 minutes, giving her the cut sign across the throat. Yeah,
Wrap it up.
yeah, yeah. I too am sorry Dad died. Could you shut up?
Get to the point.
So if you're a salesperson, sales marketing person, you're listening to this call now as we're doing it, or 10 years from now in the historical vaults of the internet. If you're not a public speaker now, become one. It doesn't have to be a life career. I've made a lot of money doing it, but I didn't get in it for a lot of money. I got into it to help sell the products I was selling. And then I found out you could actually get paid for it. And then I was off and running. But most of the people that I've trained don't make it as sales in public speaking. They don't make their living as public speakers except their sales doubled or whatever. And you can track it all back to the confidence it brought them. So get involved in public speaking. Form a group and do it. All you need is a group that will sit there and not throw things at you. Join Toastmasters. Uh, I have all sorts of problems with Toastmasters in that they, I watched one the other day who just won the national championship, and it was embarrassingly bad. He said the words right, he got his voice right and all, but he was moving. He looked like an Arthur Murray dance instructor graduate who just came out of school. "I will now take 5 steps to the right and pause," because that's dramatic. They tend to turn out people, if they really get into it, that all look the same, sound the same, and so on. We were in a nightclub one night or a restaurant with a dance floor, and I looked up and I said to Gigi, "My God, we've fallen into a nest of Arthur Murray graduates." And we looked out on the floor. She looked out on the floor. There were probably 15 couples dancing, and they were all, unbeknownst to each other, all making the same head moves and spinning around. And the men would spin and the girls would spin. And she says, "God, now that I study it, that's horrible." I said, "Yeah, it's Toastmasters on the hoof."
Oh, no.
But what toast
I'm writing that down. Toastmasters on the hoof.
but what Toastmasters will do for you is give you a group to talk to, and you can use them until you don't vomit in front of groups. Uh, you just said I'm writing that down, and I just get out my memo pad out of my pocket. This is sort of a nostalgic story, but we were in a restaurant yesterday, and I looked up, and a guy was looking at me and smiling and nodding. Well, I have face blindness, as you know, so he looked vaguely familiar, but I had no idea who it was. And so I said, TJ, look, and I pointed to him. And she said, "Oh," and she called out his name, got up and hugged him. Turns out it was an old schoolmate of hers that I had met at several things. And he was with his wife, who looked a little older than he did. Well, because he was with Gigi's in class, he was 72-ish. And I thought, well, he married a little bit older lady. Turned out it was his mother, and she's 93 and still looks great and had a great sense of humor and so on. So we start talking. I said, "Are you still," because slowly it came back to me. I said, "Are you still playing with your band?" And he said, "No, our lead singer, you may remember the blonde, blah, 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 said she just couldn't do it anymore." And we said we were all about the same age. And she just wasn't willing to get away from the grandkids and put on a gown or whatever they wore and so on. And he said, just couldn't do it. And right after she made that announcement, our backup guitarist, whatever you call the one who's not the lead guitarist, died.
Oh,
So we went from 7 to 5 in about 24 hours, and the steam just came out of us. But I said, "Oh, do you miss music?" He said, "No, no, we still meet once a week, and we play and we try and get better and better and better." And I said, "Well, that's nice." And then he said what I wrote down: "We practice for a gig we'll never do." And I thought, that's sort of sad and inspiring. He said,
I actually quit breathing right after you said that.
yeah, yeah, but we practice for a gig we'll never do. They're done, they're retired, they're finished, but they get together once a week and try and get better. And that just really struck me. I said,
I think that is lovely. I
yeah.
really do.
Well, he and his mother were still standing there talking to us, and I said, "Pardon me, I don't want to leave this to chance." And I pulled up my memo pad and wrote it down. I'm looking at it right now, and it looks like something you write on a memo pad in a bar standing up. But fortunately, I can read what I wrote, which is not always true. But we practice for a gig we'll never do. I'm selling you in public speaking, selling. Conquer that fear. And then after that, get better at doing it. And it will change all aspects of your life, even if you're practicing for a speech you'll never give. There's a look about somebody, and people can feel it, about somebody who has confidence, that got some swagger about them. Sam Goldwyn said, "I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it." And
Exactly.
yeah,
And arrogance is not the same as swagger, by the way.
yeah, no, it's not. I don't mean arrogance at all. I do have a little bit of an attitude if I walk into a room and I'm going to be speaking or what have you, is, "You're in luck. I'm here." But I hide it as best I can. Uh, but it comes from that the first time I had to speak, I started speaking, besides giving the prayer at my high school graduation, because Mrs. Griffin made me do it. I started speaking in Holiday Magic at Saturday afternoon sales meetings, because Jimmy Rucker and I got off to a pretty quick start, and we were doing well. And every once in a while, we get up and tell them what you do. So I did. I remember the first time I got up, I turned around, and these are people I knew. I worked with them all week long, and at opportunity meetings at night in Atlanta. And so there wasn't a person in there whose name I didn't know or face I didn't recognize at least. And I almost fainted. I, I just I talked once in front of 3,000 people, but 3,000, that was given the prayer at graduation, 3,000 people become an oil painting. It's not like I would rather speak to 3,000 people than 10. 3,000 people become sort of a blur, and there's nothing frightening about them. The most comfortable I ever am on stage, it seems to hit at about 15 to 20,000. I would rather talk to 20,000 people than talk to Gigi's relatives at Thanksgiving dinner. I'm more comfortable up there. But it came with get up and do it and do it and do it and do it and build your confidence, and my sales dramatically increased. And suddenly people were asking me about what do I think about this? And that led into little light consulting. And then years later, didn't have a name back then. Dr. Napoleon Hill was my mentor, coach, etc. But we didn't have names like that back then. I was talking to somebody on the phone one day and I got off and Gigi said, "Why don't you charge for that?" And I said, "Charge for what?" "Well, you talk to people, you spend a lot of time." I said, "I really like it." She said, "I'm happy you're happy. Let's get paid for it."
She's
So
a
I,
smart woman.
yeah. So I set a fee and sure enough, people started paying it. And if you're going to, I'll wrap up on this because I'm looking at the clock. Um, if you're going to follow my advice and involved in public speaking, if only as a confidence builder, doesn't have to be your career, doesn't have to change your life. But if you're going to do it, set a fee now. Someone is going to ask you, "Would you come over and speak to our group?" and so on. And if you start going, blah, 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 so you decide, A, you are a speaker. I personally would have business cards printed up that say that. Say, my business card now, Ben Gay III, salesman, speaker, sales trainer, and consultant, or not consultant. That's on my business card. It's clear. This is what I do as I hand them the card. So there's no doubt that them asking the question didn't make me create a new uh, career path. I already do it. And the second thing is set a price now. You can always go up, you can always go down. But once you're announcing yourself as a speaker, someone's going to ask you to come speak and they're going to want to know how much does it cost. Have a figure. If it's local, you might start at $500. I started at 300. Zig and I were getting 300. Zig was getting 300 and I caught him getting it. And so I went to 300 and then 1,500 and then this figure and this figure. My fee now is $20,000. But I had to have the answer in my head. Would you come speak to my group? Sure. How much? $300. A few months later, $1,500 and then $9,500 for quite some time. And then one day I thought, they seem to pay anything I ask. I'm good at what I do, and I'd like to cut back on the number of times I do it. And Earl Nightingale years ago was raising his fee, and Zig and I were sort of following him. I said, "Why do you keep jacking up your fee?" He said, "I'm trying to find a figure at which they won't hire me." Earl didn't want to do public speaking. He was a radio guy. He went to 1,500 when the rest of us were at 300. We all went to 1,500. And so have the price ready. Have business cards or whatever you guys do now, probably some computer thing, but business cards work extremely well. And on them, in addition to the other things you do, have speaker. It brings up the subject. And then, in the meantime, start practicing and getting good and getting over your fear. End of sermon.
I'm still thinking about the funeral. That's in my head. I want to talk about this next week because we've touched on it a little bit, and we're talking about reflection and review, the things that we've done this year, the things we this is what I think we need to talk about next week. How can someone assess whether they've been productive or just busy this year? And then we talked a little bit about, outsource it. Hire a virtual assistant if you need to. You've got a great story about that.
Yeah.
Um, just figure out. And when I used to be quite big in the virtual assistance industry until, everybody and their grandmother with a keyboard decided they were too, and I got tired of fighting with them. And I was just worn out. It's hard work, it really is. But I remember just saying, people say, I don't know what to hand to a virtual assistant I just don't know. And I would give them homework, say, listen, sit down, have a pad with you, a notebook, something, and write down every stinking thing you do all day long. You don't have to write down what you had for lunch, but write down what you did all day long, and you're going to discover patterns very quickly. You're also going to discover what you should not be doing because it's a total waste of your time. You can hire somebody for $15 an hour and make your $100 an hour while you're doing it. So let's talk about that next week.
Right. I made a note. So
All right.
I'll do it if you ask me.
Yeah. Well, just do what you're told. Nobody gets hurt. That's how it works. Well, listen, everybody. Oh, Ben, does any questions that we want to talk about next week that are landing on your desk?
No, we've already discussed the notes I made from conversations. But if you're going to join us next week or next time, write down some questions, shoot them over to me or Denise by email or however you contact us. And if they apply to me, I'll work them into next week's talk.
Got it. Well, listen, everybody, thank you. We always enjoy having you here, and we love to hear what you think of us. Well, Ben does. I don't want to know. I really don't. Because I can hear people saying, she's nuts. That's just, at least that's what I think y'all saying. But anyway, listen to us, get those books, The Closers 1 and 2. And we've got a lot of things to share between now and the end of 2025. And I hate to put that number out there because, these are supposed to be evergreen conversations, but we're bearing down hard on the new year. So let's get ready for it. Ben, thank you. I will see you next week.
Super. I look forward to it. Enjoyed it as always. We just have nice chats and people get to listen in. I really enjoy these sessions.
I do too, every Wednesday. I really do. And, and I've always said, I say this often, you are a friend, you're confidant in some ways, and you're very definitely my mentor. I think the world of you, and thank you.
Well, bless you. The feeling's mutual. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Tell Gigi hi.
Bye.
Bye.